On the morning of August 22, 1986, a truck driver arrived in the village of Lower Nyos in northwestern Cameroon. What he found would haunt him forever. Bodies lay everywhere, people collapsed in their homes, in doorways, along paths. Some appeared to be sleeping. Others had died mid-step. The driver counted 17 bodies on the road alone before he turned back, terrified. No fire had swept through. No gunfire had echoed in the night. The buildings stood intact, the trees still green. Yet more than 1,500 people in this valley were dead. To understand what happened, we must go back one day. Lake Nyos sits in a volcanic crater at the edge of the Oku volcanic field, a landscape of dormant volcanoes and ancient lava flows. On the evening of August 21, families in the villages below the lake were settling in for the night. Joseph Nquain, a farmer in the nearby village of Subum, later recalled hearing a rumbling sound around 9:30 in the evening. He stepped outside. The air felt strange, heavy. Within moments, he collapsed unconscious. Joseph Nquain woke 14 hours later. His body ached. His mouth tasted of gunpowder. Around him, silence. His neighbors lay motionless. His livestock, goats, chickens, all dead. He was one of only 6 survivors in Subum. In other villages closer to the lake, there were no survivors at all. The village of Nyos, home to more than 1,000 people, was left with only 4 living souls. Something invisible had swept through the valley in the night, killing with terrifying selectivity. People and animals were dead. Insects still buzzed. Plants still stood. News of the catastrophe reached the Cameroonian capital, Yaoundé, by August 23. The government dispatched medical teams and soldiers. International scientists soon followed. Initial theories ranged from chemical weapons to volcanic gases to a terrorist attack. But survivors like Joseph Nquain provided crucial clues. They described no smell, no smoke, no flame, just sudden unconsciousness. The pattern of death offered another hint: bodies were found in low-lying areas, in valleys and hollows. Higher ground had more survivors. Whatever killed these people was heavier than air, flowing downhill like water. Within days, a team of volcanologists and geochemists arrived at Lake Nyos. What they discovered was deeply unsettling. The lake's water, normally a clear blue, had turned a murky reddish-brown. Dead fish floated on the surface. Vegetation along the shoreline had been flattened, as if by a powerful wave. Scientists measured the water's chemistry and found it severely depleted of carbon dioxide. The lake had released an enormous quantity of CO2. Estimates would later place it at around 1 cubic kilometer of gas. This was no ordinary volcanic event. It was something called a limnic eruption. Lake Nyos sits directly above a pocket of magma, a remnant of the region's volcanic past. Over decades, perhaps centuries, carbon dioxide from that magma had been seeping upward through cracks in the Earth's crust, dissolving into the deep water at the bottom of the lake. Cold water under pressure can hold enormous amounts of dissolved gas, much like a sealed bottle of soda. The lake is more than 200 meters deep, and its lower layers never mix with the surface. Year after year, the concentration of CO2 in the depths grew, until the water became supersaturated. What caused the lake to release its gas on that particular night remains uncertain. Some scientists believe a landslide or rockfall disturbed the water. Others suggest a small volcanic tremor. A third theory points to cooler surface water sinking and displacing the gas-rich lower layer. Whatever the trigger, the result was catastrophic. Once the deep water began to rise, the pressure dropped. Dissolved CO2 came out of solution, forming bubbles. The bubbles made the water lighter, causing it to rise faster. More gas came out. A self-accelerating chain reaction, a runaway eruption, was underway. Survivors near the lake reported seeing a white cloud or mist rising from the water that evening, accompanied by a loud rumbling or bubbling sound. One witness described the lake's surface churning violently, shooting water and foam into the air. The eruption likely lasted only a few minutes, but in that time, it expelled an estimated 1.6 million tons of carbon dioxide. The gas formed a cloud roughly 50 meters thick. Because CO2 was 1.5 times heavier than air, the cloud did not disperse upward. Instead, it poured over the crater rim and rolled downhill at speeds up to 50 kilometers per hour. The cloud swept through the Nyos Valley with terrifying efficiency. Carbon dioxide is odorless, colorless, and at concentrations above 10%, immediately fatal. Victims would have had no warning, just sudden dizziness, then unconsciousness, then death by asphyxiation within minutes. The cloud followed the contours of the land, filling valleys and low spots, avoiding hilltops. In the village of Nyos, barely a kilometer from the lake, almost everyone died. In Cam, 4 kilometers away, the death toll was still in the hundreds. The cloud traveled as far as 25 kilometers before finally dispersing into the atmosphere. In the weeks following the disaster, rescue workers and soldiers conducted a grim census. The official death toll reached 1,746 people, though some estimates run higher. More than 3,000 cattle were found dead, along with countless wild animals and birds. The selectivity of the killer became clear. Mammals, which breathe air, were dead. Insects, which respire differently, were largely unaffected. The disaster had struck at night, when people were sleeping in low, enclosed spaces, the worst possible circumstance. Those who slept on hillsides or in open, elevated areas had a chance. Those in valley floor homes had almost none. Lake Nyos was not the first limnic eruption on record, but it was the deadliest. 2 years earlier, in 1984, a similar event at Lake Nyos, also in Cameroon, had killed 37 people. Scientists now understood they were dealing with a phenomenon unique to deep, stratified lakes in volcanic regions. Globally, only a handful of lakes are believed to pose this risk. But the knowledge came too late for the victims of Nyos. The international scientific community faced an urgent question: could it happen again? And if so, could it be prevented? In the years after the disaster, French and Cameroonian scientists conducted extensive studies of Lake Nyos. They lowered instruments into the depths, measuring temperature, pressure, and dissolved gas concentrations. What they found was alarming. Despite the massive 1986 eruption, the lake was still supersaturated with carbon dioxide. Gas continued to seep in from below, and the deep water layers remained stratified. Another eruption was not only possible, it was, over time, inevitable. The question was not if, but when. And how many more lives would be lost unless something was done? The solution devised by scientists was both simple and ingenious: install pipes that would reach down to the gas-rich bottom layer and allow the CO2 to escape in a controlled manner. In 2001, the first degassing pipe was installed at Lake Nyos. A vertical polyethylene tube, about 200 meters long, was lowered into the lake. At the bottom, gas-saturated water enters the pipe. As it rises and pressure decreases, CO2 comes out of solution, creating a self-sustaining fountain that shoots water and gas 15 meters into the air. The pipe operates continuously, releasing gas safely before dangerous concentrations can build. By 2011, 2 additional degassing pipes had been installed, bringing the total to 3. Together, they remove an estimated tens of thousands of cubic meters of CO2 each year. Scientists continue to monitor the lake's chemistry, tracking the decline in dissolved gas levels. Models suggest that with the current degassing system in place, Lake Nyos may be rendered safe within the next few decades. Similar pipes have been installed at Lake Nyos. The technology is low-cost, requires no external power, and can run indefinitely. It represents a rare victory of human ingenuity over a planetary hazard. For the survivors, the scars remain. Joseph Nkwane, who lost his entire family, spoke years later of the guilt he carried for surviving when so many did not. The government resettled some survivors away from the lake, though many have since returned, drawn back by ancestral ties to the land. The villages of Nyos, Cam, and Subam were abandoned for years, slowly reclaimed by vegetation. Memorials now stand near the lake, bearing the names of the dead. The disaster reshaped scientific understanding of volcanic lakes and inspired new monitoring programs worldwide. But for those who lived through it, Lake Nyos remains a place of ghosts. The Lake Nyos disaster revealed a hazard few had imagined, that a lake could become a time bomb, silently accumulating lethal gas over centuries until a single moment of instability released death on a biblical scale. It showed how geologic processes operate on timescales far longer than human memory, and how traditional knowledge, stories passed down through generations, can fail when a disaster has no precedent. Today, scientists monitor vulnerable lakes on 3 continents. Warning systems have been discussed, though implementation remains incomplete. Lake Nyos itself is no longer the threat it once was, its deadly reservoir slowly draining through pipes that hiss and bubble day and night. Lake Nyos remains today, a deep blue eye in the Cameroon highlands. The degassing fountains play continuously, visible from the crater rim, white plumes against the dark water, a reminder of the invisible danger below and the human effort to contain it. The lake is calm now, its deadly secret being methodically bled away. But it stands as a permanent monument to August 21, 1986, when the Earth exhaled and 1,746 people took their last breath. The invisible cloud is gone. The memory remains. And the fountains continue their work, day after day, preventing history from repeating itself.